Hello and welcome to this video about the eclipses of the spring of 2024. We're going to talk about two eclipses today. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
I'm Julia Mijas, and I am in Jackson, California.
Well, eclipses are built on new and full moons. New and full moons happen every month. It's only sometimes that a new or full moon will be an eclipse. And that happens when a moon lines up with the nodes. And we'll show you this shortly in the actual eclipse charts. But the nodes are a non-physical phenomenon that happens when the plane of the ecliptic lines up with the moon's orbit around the Earth. And this creates two invisible points called the North Node and the South Node. The North Node is above in the Northern Hemisphere. The South Node is above in the Southern Hemisphere. And these are pretty important points. If you ask any astrologer, really, whether they are a Vedic or a Western astrologer, they would tell you that the nodes are pretty important points and considered to be quite karmic. So an eclipse happens when the moon, a full moon or new moon, lines up with the nodes, because that's what makes it possible for the Earth to hide the moon, the Earth's shadow to hide the moon, or the moon to hide the sun. And that's what makes it an eclipse. So this particular eclipse season, which, by the way, eclipse seasons happen every 6 months. So we're having eclipses all the time, so much more than you would ever know from astronomers, because they usually report the ones that are the most interesting because maybe they're total or maybe they're visible from, the Northern Hemisphere, where are the people that they're talking to, those astronomers. So eclipses happen every 6 months. And they're spaced 2 weeks apart. They usually happen in pairs. And that's definitely true this spring. We have the nodes in Aries and Libra. And so the new and full moons are mostly going to be in Aries and Libra, although not entirely. And right now, the North Node is in Aries and the South Node is in Libra. And so this is the karmic foundation for the eclipses this year, which are happening in fire signs. So Julia, can you just say some of your thoughts about what it means when the nodes are transiting through Aries and Libra, with the North Node in Aries?
Yeah, well, Aries is the beginning of the entire zodiac. There's a quantum leap happening between Pisces, the end of a cycle, and Aries. And Aries is a sign of self-assertion. It represents the masculine principle in us all. It represents individualism, whereas Libra is much more about partnership. It's much more about social cooperation. And now that we have the North Node being an evolutionary point, which describes what we need to be moving towards, what we need to be developing in the sign of Aries, I think that speaks to kind of the collective impulse right now is to bring about some of the best aspects of the masculine principle in us all, and to enhance our sense of independence too.
Right. And that goes with the South Node in Libra, because the nodes are always precisely opposite to each other. And as you said, the North Node is an evolutionary point. It points the direction that we're going in, whereas the South Node is something that we need to let go of or release or move away from. So the South Node in Libra is a somewhat feminine principle, but most particularly it's very relationship oriented. And so when the South Node is traveling through Libra, maybe what we need to be letting go of is being too much of a people pleaser, being too, overly social, overly accommodating, and instead embracing that North Node you spoke of, Julia, in Aries, where we can learn to be more independent and, self-willed. So that's the foundation this nodal axis is laying out for the eclipses this year in fire signs. So how do you look at an eclipse, and how can you know what to expect from a given eclipse? Well, first of all, you want to ask yourself, is it a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse? And if it's a lunar eclipse, it's going to be very emotional. It's going to really stir the pot emotionally. You might have strong feelings. And also, because a lunar eclipse is built on a full moon, you might have a lot of stuff come up in your relationships because a full moon pits the moon against the sun, and it is therefore a relational dynamic. So you can expect lunar eclipses to play out more in your relationships and more emotionally, whereas a solar eclipse is more actional in its nature. It's more about, it's more individualistic, and it's more about behavior. So you have to watch the behaviors that you do during a solar eclipse, which other people can see and experience. So how would you know if an eclipse is going to be more or less intense? Well, if it's going to be a total eclipse, that's definitely maximum intensity. And if it's going to be a partial or an annular eclipse, that's less intense. Another way to know is how close to the nodes is it? If the eclipse, and we'll show you this shortly in the charts for this year, for this season, how close to the nodes is it? And these two features are generally connected. If the moon or sun that's being eclipsed is super close to the node that the eclipse is built on, then it's going to be a more intense eclipse. Now, also, you want to ask yourself, is this eclipse initializing or releasing? And Lily, Julia, could you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, so initializing eclipses happen when the north node is involved with the moon. You know, whether it's a full moon eclipse, it's right next to the moon, or a new moon where it's right next to both the sun and moon. And those are initializing, which means that there's an energy of new beginnings coming this way because eclipses bring change, but this is a change of a new chapter versus the releasing eclipses, which have the south node attached to the moon, which is more of a letting go process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that can really give you your marching orders. That can really give you some instruction for how to navigate the eclipse with the, the minimum challenges and disruption to your life. So also an eclipse will be more intense for you personally if it aspects something in your chart precisely, meaning within like a 5-degree range, or as we call it, orb of influence. So if you've got something in your chart, especially if it's like a big deal thing in your chart, such as your sun or your own moon or your rising or your, Mercury or Venus or Mars, something that you really identify with, and this connects with an eclipse, then you're going to really feel it in that part of your personality. Um, Now also, an eclipse will be more intense for you personally if you are in the part of the world where you can see the eclipse. Now, it's kind of funny because people sometimes travel for eclipses, and the ancients would never have told you to do this. The ancients would have told you to like stay away from the eclipse because if you can see it, then you can feel it, and you're kind of asking for drama. But this is what we get to do, and they're pretty cool to watch. So as long as you have the right equipment and you can do it safely, we travel for eclipses. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? So we're going to tell you about the features, these features that we're describing, like how they connect with the nodes and whether they're solar or lunar eclipses and how intense they are. We're going to tell you about all this stuff in both eclipses coming this season. And we'll also describe each eclipse's shadow agents, which is my fancy name for any planets that aspect the eclipse and would be sort of caught up in the vortex of the eclipse. And they have to be also within 5 degrees, so close enough to matter. So we're going to show you these features in each eclipse chart. I'm going to turn on the screen share and show you some stuff. First thing I want to show you is that we have a page on our website, pandoraastrology.com, all about eclipses. And the easy way to find it is to click on this forecast button and or mouse over it and go to the drop down eclipses this year. And this page gives you a lot of the backstory, for understanding eclipses, and also speaks to the eclipses happening this year, and gives you also a point of reference where you can look up some eclipses that have happened in the past that we've made posts about. So I really recommend that you check that out, and you'll find the link for this page in the description below. So we do have these eclipses coming up. First of all, a lunar eclipse in Libra in March. It's happening on March 25th. We've named this one The Need for Peace versus the Call of Battle. It really pits Aries versus Libra in a very strong way. This is a penumbral lunar eclipse in Libra, and it's on March 25th or maybe March 24th, depending on your time zone. This particular eclipse is 10 degrees away from the node that it connects to. Here we have the moon in Libra at 5 degrees, the south node here at 15 degrees, so it's 10 degrees away from the node. A little bit further, and this is why this is part of why this is a penumbral eclipse, and therefore not as intense as a total, which the solar eclipse in Aries is going to be. So because the moon is eclipsed, this is going to have strong emotional themes. And also because the moon is with the south node, this is going to have a releasing effect. So it's going to allow you to clear some karma from the past. And we have some shadow agents here. Obviously, the sun and the moon opposite each other are the reason why it's an eclipse. So we'll talk about that. But we have a couple of other planets helping. And I say that they're helping because they're placed harmoniously connected to the sun and moon. Here's Pluto, which sextiles the sun and trines the moon, and Pallas Athena, asteroid, warrior goddess, trining the sun and sextiling the moon. So Julia, would you just have at it? Tell me any and all of your thoughts about this eclipse and its factors, and how you think that people are going to experience this one.
Yeah. That's a really, really good question. Like you said, it is going to be an emotional eclipse. So what types of emotions and where are we going to feel them? In the sign of Libra, it could be in any partnership that you're a part of. If you have a romantic partner, if you have a business partner, if you work one-on-one in any close capacity with someone, I think that that could definitely affect those types of relationships. I really do like the support that we're getting from Pluto. Because Pluto gives Pluto's influence, especially by trine to the moon, is transformative, but not in a crisis-laden way. It can bring, Pluto is a powerful planet. It can bring, I think, in a positive way, a lot of depth and profundities to something. So there could be a change in your partnerships, but overall, I think that it could be very supportive because it's gentle Pluto we're dealing with, if there is such a thing. So that's sort of one way to be looking at it.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly valuable because when the moon is in an air sign, it doesn't really like feelings very much. It would rather like be rational, be thoughtful, be sensible, and cerebral, kind of in the head. So I think that Pluto being a watery planet really adds some support to that. So this moon really does need peace, right? Moon in Libra needs peace. But then we have the call of battle over here in the form of the sun in Aries pulling in the north node direction of saying, but hey, I can't spend all of my time caught up emotionally in relationship, maybe trying to please somebody or placate somebody or smooth their ruffled feathers. I've got to forge my own path through life. And the sun has help and support from Pallas Athena. Now, Pallas Athena is a warrior woman and a wise woman, and she's all about balancing strength with softness because she has some traits that are considered stereotypically masculine. She can fight in battle, and she's the protector of civilization. She's the city wall. But also she has a soft side. She has a feminine side. And so she is a goddess of wise governance inside those city walls. And part of why I'm mentioning all this is that the moon is the soft side of all this, whereas the sun is the tough side of all of this. And Pallas Athena can relate to both, and so can help this, to not turn into a real battleground, but also not, overly capitulating either, but to find something balanced in between. So I think that's pretty much what this moon is going to feel like. Let's go to the other moon. By the way, if you're enjoying this video and getting value from it, please like it right now before you forget. Subscribe to our Pandora Astrology channel for more good stuff like this. And here's why. We are actual practicing astrologers, not just astrology content creators who have little experience actually talking with clients. We are in the trenches with wonderful clients like you every day. And our astrologers have over 60 years of combined wisdom interacting with clients around charts in this practice. So hit that like button and consider seeing one of us for a session where you can learn so much more about yourself and how to live your best life. Now we have coming up in April a solar eclipse in Aries and loads of fire in this chart. We've got tons of Aries right here, even a little bit of Sagittarius over here, although it's not involved with this eclipse. But this is a very fiery eclipse, and it is a solar eclipse because the sun and the moon are together. And so the moon is has swung around the earth, so it's placed between the sun and us, and it hides or occludes the sun from our view, and that's how we get a solar eclipse. So this one, Julia, I think is so interesting because check it out. All of these things are in 19 degrees together. So the sun and the moon, of course, we would expect them to both be in 19 degrees because, an eclipse has to be a precise conjunction of them. But then we have Chiron here along for the ride, which is why this one is called the Wounded Warrior, right? And they conjunct the North Node. And so it's the Wounded Warrior evolving. And notice that the North Node at 15 degrees is only 4 degrees away from the eclipse degree at 19. So that's why this one is a total eclipse. And it's going to be more intense, whether it's someplace that you can see or not. And then we have the square to Ceres too. So we'll throw in some thoughts about that. Julia, what are you thinking about this eclipse?
Well, I think total eclipses can be a lot more powerful than when they're not quite as exact. And it's a total north node one, so it's going to be a really big new chapter. I mean, Aries is a sign that has a lot of newness built into it anyway, and we have the north node there. So this is kind of a big collective chapter for us all. Now, Chiron in there throws something very interesting into the mix, because Chiron can bring about past pain and can also catalyze current healing. And I think that since this is a North Node eclipse, it's going to be opening a new chapter in healing for us all, healing which might have to do with our own independence, our own ability to assert ourselves, our own ability to survive. And seeing that square from Ceres, which, Ceres is about security, and security and survival kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways too. No, you don't really think of Ceres as a security, a survival asteroid, but we need some security, food, body, money, all the things to physically sustain us in order to survive. So there's a sense of letting go of the past if done properly and embracing new healing, which can come with this eclipse.
Yeah. And I think there's a real, I would call it like a real watch out attached to this eclipse, because when I look at that Chiron and square Ceres and so deeply connected and embedded with this eclipse, and I think about this eclipse being total and initializing, the thing to consider about the North Node eclipse is that it opens a door to the future, and the things that happen during the eclipse, and especially because this is a behavioral eclipse being a solar one, we have to think about our behavior during this eclipse and in the sort of the zone of this eclipse, because how you behave and the actions that you take during this eclipse can sow karmic seeds for the future. You might be creating karma that you have to go back and unpack later, or you might be planting seeds for good karma to come back to you because of your good acts during this eclipse. So that's a pretty big consideration, especially because Chiron's presence here can signal that some people will be experiencing this eclipse as a real blow to their warrior ego. And so some people might really go off the deep end during an eclipse like this, like could be really angry, could get ragey, and their behavior might be dangerous for you. And so keep your eye on that, and try to stay away from people who are prone to ragey fits. And yeah, I think it's likely to be rather intense. So you might ask yourself, how long do the effects of an eclipse last? If an eclipse triggers something in your chart, you should watch for its effects, its strongest effects, and really the opportunity to make a difference within a few days before the eclipse and a few days after the eclipse, even as the energy is dissipating. But also, an eclipse will usually have an echo about 3 months later, and then it will be replaced by the same kind of eclipse at the 6-month interval. So watch during the same type of moon 3 months later. So you would be looking for the the new moon in what's that? April, May, June, July, right? So you would be looking for the new moon in July as an echo of this eclipse, and the full moon in June as an echo of this eclipse, if it touches on something in your chart and you feel like it's affected you really strongly. But it will be replaced by the next set of eclipses, and that's where its influence ends. So what are the birthdays that are going to feel this? And I have some notes about this on here. If you have anything at all between 0 and 10 degrees of a cardinal sign, you're going to feel the lunar eclipse in Libra. And if you have anything at all between 14 and 24 degrees of a cardinal sign, you will feel the solar eclipse in Aries. But if your sun is there, I can just tell you the birth dates that are going to feel it. So if you have your birthday between March 19th and 30th, inclusive, that whole date span, then you're really going to feel the March lunar eclipse. Also, if your birthday is June 20th to July 1st, September 22nd to October 3rd, or December 22nd to 31, you're going to really feel the March eclipse. And if you have your birthday in the following dates, you're going to feel the April solar eclipse, meaning January 4th to 15th, again, inclusive, April 3rd to 14th, July 5th to 16th, and October 6th to 17th. Find our site at pandoraastrology.com to get a reading with one of us, and find us on Patreon for workshops and classes. And we'll see you around the cosmos.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.